What do you do when you hear voices down the hall? What do you do when you see a shadow in your room? What can you say when you see eldritch lights in the sky? Do you have the strength to believe in the unbelievable? To embrace the impossible? To go beyond the beyond? Join my friend as we explore the dark corners. Tonight's show is going to be a little bit different, mostly because I didn't have anything to plan out. But I think this is going to be interesting for a lot of you. We normally talk about on this show the paranormal. We talk about ghosts. We talk about UFOs. Pretty soon we're going to talk about some cryptids. But there's some other things that you might find interesting. Tonight we're going to talk about mostly about a subculture. And what is a subculture? Well, a subculture is a culture that exists like right next to us. And there are a lot of people who are fans of this subculture who are members of it. And they live their lives according to that subculture. And tonight we're going to talk about that a little bit. Mostly because, well, not much has happened. And I didn't have time to get another Q&A going. But next week we'll probably do some Q&A. But the reason we're going to talk about this and talk about this particular subculture is because of the simple fact that I got contacted by someone a few days ago to talk, who asked me, they were on the paranormal pop culture, best paranormal pop culture podcast or something group on Facebook, which is done by Larkin, who also runs a bunch of Art Bell pages. But this person was asking, what is the vampire lifestyle like? And I didn't know what he was talking about at first, because when you think of vampire lifestyle, you think drinking people's blood, right? But then it dawned on me what he was talking about. He wasn't talking about like real life vampires or blood fetishists or anything like that. He was talking about what we call Goths, Goth, or Gothics. And so I started to try to teach him a little bit of what the scene is. And that's what I'm going to do tonight for you guys. Though quite a few of you who listen to this probably know what the scene is and are probably going to yell at me because I'll probably get it all wrong. But that's okay. Because really it's 3:30 in the morning, and if I get it wrong at 3:30, then oh well. Which is interesting. It's 3:30 in the morning now, is it? Okay. But before we get to that, I'm going to do what I called, it was a Christie update. Now, you guys who've been listening to me for a while know that that my ex-wife died, and that she was visiting me for a little bit. So I'm sure you all want to know what's going on with that, and this is what's been happening, and it brings up some interesting ideas. And it's possible we could probably go a whole show on this, but she's seeming to fade into the background a little bit. I don't hear from her as much, and that can bring back, why that is. I really do not know, but I don't talk to her as much as I used to in the last 3 weeks, and that might be because that I don't need her as much. And maybe that's the truth, that when your loved ones pass on, then maybe after a time, after you're going through a grieving process or whatever, and I know I haven't completely gone through that grieving process. I'm still grieving. But there's a time when it comes that it doesn't hurt as much. And with me, the reason this is happening, is because I didn't see her for 6-7 years, and we were enemies for for a lot of those years. But as you know, my feelings in that have been pretty much cleared up. And I just see her as a wonderful person. But if you remember, she used to come to me and I would smell her perfume and she would drop off pennies. And lately, I have not smelled her perfume at all. I haven't heard her in 3 weeks, I think. 3 to 2 weeks, something like that. And on Saturday, uh, there were pennies, but I was also on a date on Saturday, and it would make sense that my ex-wife was checking me out. Um, but that's it, and I think that as things begin to change, um, I think that we can still hear spirit and listen to our loved ones. But I think that, how do I say this? Because it's 3:33 a.m. in the morning. Um, okay, so basically what I'm saying is that our loved ones can talk to us from the other side, right? But I think that sometimes we have to let go a little bit in order to let them go, if that makes sense. They're always going to love you. They're always going to be there. And if you want to talk to them, you can definitely go about it. But I think that sometimes we just have to, as the old song says, let it go a little bit. And um, it doesn't mean that I don't care about her any less. I've known her for years and years and years. It just means that it doesn't hurt as much right now. It doesn't hurt as badly. And I keep thinking of that episode. Actually, it's from a Batman film called Mask of the Phantasm, where like Bruce has met someone and he can't be Batman while he's happy. And he keeps crying in front of his the gravestones of his mom and dad and saying, why can't I be happy? Why can't I do this? Why must I suffer this whole time? And I kind of feel like that. I kind of feel that I have been unhappy for so long that I'm kind of pounding against those gravestones, just like the goddamn Batman. But I think my point is this: is that once our life starts moving ahead and we start going the way we should, then the pain is not as intense. And yeah, I miss her, and yeah, I feel great regret. But I think she hasn't come to me because she doesn't need to. I mean, the whole reason she came to me in the first place was to basically say I'm okay and I don't hate you. I want you to let you know that I still exist out there, right? That seems to be the main purpose. And for us to have peace together. And that was the main thing. And she did that. And she came to me for, what was it, 2 weeks or so. It's a long time. But now she's just not there. I can feel her sometimes. She's around. And like I said, if I wanted to force the issue, I could probably talk to her. But maybe I'm not supposed to. Maybe I'm just supposed to move on and let it go. So I wanted to share all of that with you guys. And I think that it's important for us to talk about that a little bit. And I'll keep giving the update, but I have a feeling that she's probably going to continue to move further and further into the background, unless I really need her, and then she'll be there. Because, I guess with a guardian spirit or something, that if a spirit holds your hand the whole entire time, then you're just not going to be able to grow in the way that you should. And I'm growing inside, and and sometimes it's good to have a little helping spirit friend, but sometimes that can be bad. That can be bad. So yeah, there's that. Anyhow, so yeah, I mean, if you guys want to talk more about this and stuff, like leave me a line or something, and we can discuss it on the next podcast or whatever. But today, I'm going to take you somewhere very spooky, something very dark and scary, something very melancholy yet beautiful. I am going to take you inside a place where not many have traveled, a scene that is old yet it's dying, yet it could never truly die. I am bringing you into the goth scene. So let's just start with this. I am a goth. I am gothic. I have been a part of the scene since 1990, 1991. I got into the scene in high school. I think a lot of us do that. And I've been a part of it pretty much ever since. And I'm 43 now, so it's been a long time. What is a goth? What is gothic? Well, gothic is a really hard thing to explain, but I'll try to do this. Now, we are extremely misunderstood about what we are. And one of the reasons we are so misunderstood is that a lot of people have different concepts of what the Gothic movement is. But there are certain things that are in common. Um, I'll try to give you a tad idea of what I think it is. And we'll go through there. So for me personally, uh, goth is a way. I always say that it's a way of looking at beauty in a way that's not beautiful. And what do I mean by that? Well, goths are all about the about aesthetics, right? It's all about like visuals and atmosphere, and anything that's atmospheric and kind of a dark atmosphere could be considered something that's goth or gothic. Um, but in the end, um, gothic is truly about the music, because before anything happens, before we talk about uh, like pictures and all of that, um, we are going to talk about the music, because that's where it came from. It came from a musical movement. So where did the Gothic scene come from? What is it? What am I going on about? You're nuts, and why are you wearing all black? It's not Halloween. Well, every day is Halloween for me, and the reason I wear black is because it's slimming. That's mostly the reason, and it looks badass on me. That's another reason. Okay, so goth. So goth is a musical genre that came about in the late 70s, early 80s. It is a direct cousin to the punk rock movement of 76 and on. In fact, a lot of the bands that we call gothic nowadays um, came from the old punk rock scene, and then they transformed. A really good example of this is a band called The Damned, which eventually took all those theatrics from what would become the goth scene, and turned it into to what their band is, because they started out as pure punk rock, like really fast, but then they slowed it up and made it goth. So I keep talking about goth music. Well, what is goth music? Well, there were three waves of goth, and each wave was completely different. But we're going to start with the first wave. We're going to talk about the Batcave scene. Um, Goth has usually in drums, it's kind of like tribal drumming with circular guitar and like this creepy kind of thumpy bass. It's very bass driven, it's very minimalistic, and often it's very sad or intense or atmospheric. I mean, atmospheric is the most important thing. Goth music, like I said, it came from punk rock, um, but the aesthetics of goth rock came from something else. And most of the people who started the goth scene um, were really into what I call glitter rock or glam rock or stuff like that. So bands like David Bowie, Roxy Music, uh, uh, bands like that, Matt the Hopple, the Sweets, stuff like that. Um, in fact, we can see some proto goth. What I call proto goth is prototype goth stuff that was could have been goth, but was not. Goth wasn't around yet, so it was kind of ahead of its time. Yeah, you can see some proto goth in a song called "In Every." What's it called? It's a Roxy Music song, and it's called. Hold on one second. Just let me look real quick. 1 second. 1 second. This is not dead air. It really isn't. Uh, in every dream hosts a heartache, and that was done by Roxy Music in the '70s. And that kind of darkness, kind of psychedelic darkness, um, is very much kind of like what goth is in a lot of ways, except some of the slower stuff. So the aesthetics, the theatricalness, the all of that came from stuff like Bowie. That's why when the first real goth band showed up, um, it was very influenced by Bowie. Now, goth can be said to come from two bands. Uh, from the beginning, I mean, just starting this out. Now there's other stuff down the line that also influenced goth. I mean, I could make a case that the Monks influenced goth from the '60s, but there are two bands there's direct lineage, and that lineage starts with a band called Bauhaus and a band called Joy Division. Now, what's so important about these bands? Okay, so Bauhaus is what we would call a post-punk band. And about 1977, 1978 or so, we started seeing these bands start to kind of change it up a little bit. These punk bands, they were like changing what they what their sound was, and was trying to get away from the that angry kind of sound. So they started experimenting these punk bands with other kinds of emotions instead of anger. And one of the first of one of the first bands to do this was a band called Joy Division, and another band, what we're going to talk about right now, um, is a band called Bauhaus, which is the name is based on an architectural school in Germany, I believe. And they were an experimental band. They were called post punk. Just they were experimenting with other sounds and emotions instead of anger. Uh, they seem to be more into like krautrock, kind of, but um, the lead singer of Bauhaus, Peter Murphy, was really into Bowie. He was really into Roxy Music. He was really into a lot of those things. So when he went on stage, um, he was trying to emulate a lot of those guys, including Iggy Pop and David Bowie. And but he put a dark spin on it. Yeah, what happened was that they came out with a song, and it was a joke song. It was never meant to be taken seriously. and the song was called Bela Lugosi's Dead. And it's like this. It's like, Bela Lugosi's dead, undead, undead. The bats have left the bellflower. The victims have been bled and poisoned eyes. The cat walks. Bela Lugosi's dead. And it goes, undead, undead, undead. And that's kind of the thing. I mean, you could go up right now, type in Bela Lugosi's Dead on YouTube if you're interested and watch it, or even watch a Bauhaus concert, because what they were trying to do was something that was so very strange but artistic and dramatic, and that's kind of what happened. And accidentally, and much to their chagrin, they created something called goth. Now, you'll notice a lot of Bauhaus songs just have this it's like reverb, lots of reverb. Well, they weren't trying to be spooky with that. They were just trying to like do reggae stuff. And I guess back then a lot of like the reggae stuff in the 70s had this oh, I am so sorry, my friends. It's 3:48 in the morning. Um, it had this like reverb. So according to them, they were never trying to make anything spooky, and Bela Lugosi's Dead was a joke. Um, but it didn't turn out that way, and people started taking it seriously. And we'll have to talk about someplace a little further north than where Bauhaus was, to get an idea of the music. So right now we have this skeletal looking tall guy who dresses up in a cape. He wears like pale makeup, and he sings about Bela Lugosi. And it was stunning and amazing, and people have never seen anything like it. And so a whole genre started to rise up. Now, musically, this is the most important thing we're going to talk about is musically where this came from. Um, and like I said, we're going to talk about a band that was up in the north in Manchester, and his band was called Joy Division. Now, if we're going to talk about goth rock, it is very important we talk about Joy Division. It's because while Bauhaus had the aesthetics, it had the black clothing, it had the eyeliner and the lipstick and all of that, Joy Division had the soul. Joy Division had the artisticness. Joy Division had the depth. Joy Division was made up of four people. Peter Hook. Let's see. I'm going to look them up real quick because it's really late. Blah, 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 blah. All right, here it is. So this was a Joy Division. They formed in Salford, in Manchester, and Bernard Summard, Peter Hook, Stephen Morse, and the late great Ian Curtis. Now, the music of Joy Division is like, it's hard to explain. It's the most desolate thing you could ever hear. It's just overwhelming in atmosphere. And you can tell that this guy was really putting his soul into everything that he did. And they were around for, gosh, I guess they started in 76. But they were around till about 1980. They started as a punk band called Warsaw. And like I said, they decided to experiment. And Ian Curtis was suffering from depression. And he was suffering this because he would have seizures. And the pills he was taking were making him more and more depressed. And eventually he committed suicide. Um, and he died right before their first tour in the United States. But even though he died, the band themselves reformed and became a band called New Order, which I am sure that every one of you have heard at one point. Maybe not the kids, but everyone around my age or around 10 years. Um, but I think the point I'm making is this: is that it was the music of Joy Division, that style, that that kind of minimalistic sorrow that they were able to do, and it was the stage show of Bauhaus that that basically was what brought goth together. Um, you can see that Joy Division was highly influenced The Cure. Uh, Bauhaus highly influenced bands like the Sisters of Mercy and such and so forth. You can look up all these bands if you want. Just type in like The Cure or the Sisters of Mercy. Um, and that's and that's that. That's kind of how the scene started, and then it grew and grew and grew. And then they made a club called the Bat Cave, and originally it was a glitter rock club, but people started dressing up in black lipstick and black eyeliner, and they wear all black and put their hair up and have like mohawks and things like that, and they were supposed to look like almost like monster space aliens, but it was very um it was very individualistic back at that time. There was no gothic there was there was no no gothic uniform. So that's a little bit about where it came from, and hopefully you guys are understanding this. Now, why did I get into it? And it just talked to me. It was I was going through a very dark time in my teenage years. I was borderline suicidal. I had very few friends. I didn't know how to communicate, and that's still a problem I have today. Um, but it was music. I was completely isolated, and I can't even remember how I got it. I think it was through a mutual acquaintance. I listened to this album called Disintegration by The Cure, and my whole life changed forever. It was I heard that pretty dark music, and I said, "Oh my God, I need to hear more of this." And this man, he feels the same way that I do, and I'm not alone. And I made a vow after that because I started getting into music right after that, right? Um, that someday I would do for some young man what The Cure did for me. And I don't know if I've done that. I've been in a lot of bands in my life, and I'll probably never know. But maybe when I pass on, I'll find out. But it was a coping mechanism and a safety blanket. But it was also me. I am a very dramatic kind of person. I'm very much larger than life, which is why I probably like doing these podcasts. I like to be on stage, and I'm just a larger than life person, and the goth scene suited me for that. Because it's such a larger than life, very theatrical scene compared to something like ska or reggae or whatever. So it just called to me, the whole thing. Uh, and throughout my high school and then into my college years, and I got really more heavily into it. Uh, by the time I was 19, I was in bands. I had half my hair shaved. My hair dyed black. I was looking pretty cool, and I listened to a lot of music. Now, there's misconceptions about us, and not everyone is the same. So I can't say if this is true or not. But on the whole, uh, goths are not violent usually. In fact, I think we'd be afraid if we broke a nail. if we got into a fight. That's not to say Goths don't fight, because they certainly do, but no more than any other group. We're not all on drugs, not all of us. Um, Drug use amongst Goths is pretty much the same as it's amongst normal people. Um, some of us do worship Satan. Some of us are Catholic. I've known a lot of Goth Mormons, and I've known a lot of Goth Wiccans. So religious affiliation goes completely up and down the thing. Though there is more of a affiliation with things like Wicca, because we Goths like spooky things, and there were a lot of Goth Catholics. Let's see what else. Basically, we're just like you and me. We're just people, and and that's the way we act. It's just the stuff we like to do. It's fun. We enjoy it. So yeah, that's some of the things I wanted to address. You keep hearing that Goths are evil, and then after Columbine, uh, after those assholes shut up that school, we were the ones who were targeted. I almost got beat up like 3 times during then, and most of us are pretty sweet people, but I think a lot of us we put like facades on, because we're afraid of being hurt. Because often we Goths are usually very sensitive people. We may act like badasses and such and so forth, or bitches, but we really are not. Usually we're very damaged people, who's gone through a lot, and this is kind of our way of getting through things. So yeah, so there's that. And the reason I brought all this up is because, like I said, some guy contacted me on the podcasting and wanted to learn what the goth scene is, and this is just kind of a very brief overview. But I want to touch on something that he was touching on, and he found out that his wife or girlfriend was a goth, and he was worried that she was in an open relationship. And I wanted to talk on sexuality a little bit. What is the goth stance on sexuality? If you're a kid, don't listen. Yeah, whatever. But well, I guess you got to learn somehow. Here's the thing about goths and sexuality: we don't discriminate. Period. Really, if it's consensual, we don't discriminate. Uh, if it's not consensual, then we'll kick your ass. But or call the cops, or whatever. But if it's consensual, we don't discriminate. And because we don't discriminate, we have a very open version of sexuality. Uh, and this doesn't go for everyone, but it means that you're most less likely to be called a slut in the goth scene than anywhere else, because we recognize that women have power, and that women have the power to use their sexuality any way they want to. And that's kind of it. This guy was talking about open relationships, and here's the thing about open relationships: it is personal to the couple, and it's personal to them. And an open relationship is that you're in a relationship, but you can sleep with who you want, um, just as long as as the other person in a relationship says yes. And in Seattle, I knew quite a few people who did this. Um, I don't think of it as a goth thing. I think goths are drawn towards it because of the freedom, but it's a relatively new thing from what I remember. I mean, in the 90s, I mean, I've gotten out much, but I don't remember many open relationships or open marriages or things like that. So it's relatively current, like probably within the last 15 years or so, where it was getting more and more and more. So here's the thing: is that not all goths are in open relationships. In fact, most of the goths I know are not. It's just up to whoever it is, who wants what they want their relationship to be. So yeah, um, sexuality is a very personal thing, and you can't judge a subculture on its sexuality, on something that personal. And what does it matter? Okay, so I meet this girl, and she said she was in an open relationship, and I'm not into open relationships, but she wants to have a regular relationship. Here's the thing: it doesn't matter what she did in the past. Okay, if she killed someone, you know, did something horrible, uh, you know, criminal like that, they don't care. But I don't care how many people my girlfriend slept with, if she was in an open relationship in the past or not, because right now she's with me, and that's all that matters. As long as she's with me, she's with me. The past is the past. You got to learn to trust. Okay, so enough of that. So that's a brief look at what the goth scene is, and so I hope you like that. Like I said, this is something that is can be misconstrued a lot. But really, we're just a subculture uh, who likes our kind of music, and we like dressing up, and we'll have a glass of wine and write poetry and whatever. We look like Lydia Dietz. We look like Johnny Depp. We like that aesthetic. It's cool. We live in a Tim Burton film. That's all I have to say about the goth scene. So, moving on from that, and I had a new topic to talk about, but I think I'm going to tell you a story. And I don't know if I have talked about this in any of the other podcasts. Uh, here's a UFO story, and I don't know what happened with this, or if this was real, or what I saw. I have an idea of what I think I saw, um, but just to burn time, I'll tell you this story. It is 1995. It is in October. My ex-girlfriend Roberta and I, and a bunch of other people, are driving down back from a Renaissance Fair in Northern California. As we're driving, I think I was in the back seat, but I don't really remember because it was a long, long, long time ago. Um, I hear Roberta yell something, and I look up and I see this disc shape that's on the ground as we're driving, and then it lifts up and goes into the air and is gone in 20 seconds. It's just bam, just out there. And we're both stopped, and we're like just imagining what the hell is going on here. Uh, but it's gone. It's completely gone. And that's when we start to realize that we just saw a UFO. Now, I've been thinking about this for years and years and years. I don't know what it was. Um, it was too fast to be an airplane. Uh, my only guess I have is that it could have been a drone. And I think that in the 90s, a lot of people in a lot of people were seeing drones because they were making drones back then. So I think a lot of UFO cases were drones, like military drones, but not all of them. And I'm not sure where this one falls into it. Um, so yeah, it could have been a drone, but drones don't go that quickly over the horizon. And this was in the San Joaquin Valley, which you can see for miles and miles and miles and miles. So yeah, I don't think it was a drone, but I wonder if it was small, and I don't know what it was. So if you ever saw a a a saucer shape that looks like that takes off from the place in takes off from the land in in the San Joaquin Valley, let me know, because I don't know if other people saw this or it was just me, but I would really like to know. So yeah, there's that, and we'll talk a little bit more about UFOs coming up. Not so much now, but we will in the future. Uh, but I also want to know what you guys want to talk about because we're gonna shuffle off the Buffalo pretty soon. It's wow, it's 4:07 a.m. So yeah, I'm gonna have to head to sleep kind of soon. Um, but would you like another Q&A thing? Do you want to talk about cryptids? What do you guys want to talk about? So yeah, let's let me know what you want to do. If not, then this week I'll put up a Q&A, and we'll do that again because that was a lot of fun. Anyhow, I'm Phil. Uh, I've been rambling for 40 minutes about the Gothic scene and the paranormal. And I wanted to tell you guys I have a lot of fun doing this, and it helps me cope with experiences. And I like talking to you guys too. And I hope you have a good evening or a good day or wherever you are. And good night.